Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Monsoon Twilight event. My name is Rudy Michelson, I'm from Monsoon Communications. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded. We record all of these and then we post the presentations on the Monsoon YouTube channel, and we have a couple hundred extra investors that view these events after the event. The format today is that we have two speakers. In the first case, we've got Simon White, who's standing in for Paul Rennie, who couldn't make it today, for Paradigm, and then of course we've got Stephen Littlemore with Immuron. I just wanted to say that, we'll have the usual format of having a Q&A after each presenter, and then we'll have a few drinks and a bit of networking afterwards. I just want to say that Paradigm is a company that I think a lot of us know pretty well. It's currently in phase 3 trials in knee osteoarthritis with this drug PPS that actually demonstrates genuine disease-modifying potential. The company had big news today with strong results for demonstrating increased cartilage thickness for patients with knee OA. If you need a validation of what Paradigm has got, you could talk to Bruce Moyer here. Bruce is a trial subject, ex-cricketer for the state of Victoria and well known for wobbly knees, and Bruce has described his treatment in the trial as life-changing. But as we know in biotech, be careful of sample sizes of one and be careful of antibodies.
I'm on the second dose.
Speaking of sporting powers, Simon White is a Director of Investor Relations for Paradigm. He joined Paradigm in 2020 and has experience in equity, capital markets and financial services sector, and he played footy for Carlton for 8 years. Would you please welcome Simon White?
Thanks, Rudy. Always nice to be able to speak after a good share price day, so thank you for having me. And I think I've just doubled the sample size of people that had PPS with Bruce. So we'll get going. Standard disclaimer. A little bit about Paradigm. We are a ASX listed company, obviously founded in 2014. We listed in 2015. So our founder and managing director, Paul Rennie, founded the company in 2014, and we are working with the development of a new formulation of penazam polysulfate sodium. So a drug that has been used for 60 years and has a 60-year track record of treating pain, inflammation and thrombosis in humans. We are working via subcutaneous injection for our clinical programs, our lead clinical programs of osteoarthritis and mucopolysaccharidosis, and I'll focus mostly on osteoarthritis today. Our treatment course for osteoarthritis is a 6-week treatment course with 2 injections a week for 6 weeks. We are currently in phase 3. We have a phase 3 program, a global program going on, and we've just released some follow-up data from MRIs and at 6 months and also 12-month durability following 1 course of treatment of PPS in a phase 2 study. Cash position at June 30, end of financial year, is 56 million. We have a commercial strategy to partner our clinical assets. So we look to bring this product through with a partner, and we're all in active discussions with partners at the moment for either regional deals for OA or MPS, our clinical assets. The Benopharmachem is the originator of the molecule we're working with, PPS. So they have been providing PPS to the market for a number of years, and we have a 25-year post-marketing exclusive supply agreement for our clinical programs. So very strong IP protection, and we also have patent protection to back that up. A little bit on the corporate snapshot. Like a lot of biotechs at the moment, our share price has been under a little bit of pressure, but we continue to put out good news. So share price today is obviously here is not reflective of the little bounce we had today off the back of some really positive news. Market cap around $180 million, $56 million in cash at June 30, and a couple of substantial holders there. Obviously, Paul Rennie, founder, is our largest shareholder, and we also have some very supportive funds out of Hong Kong, Allianz being one of those who was a substantial holder. So very briefly, what is osteoarthritis? Osteoarthritis is a progressive disease that affects the whole joint and continues to break down over time. So that causes pain, swelling, disability, and overall decrease in the quality of life for the people that suffer from it. It is the most common musculoskeletal condition or problem. So with global prevalence, we're looking at over 500 million people worldwide have clinically diagnosed osteoarthritis, so a huge market opportunity. In osteoarthritis, we see the cartilage within the joint begin to break down, causing slowly worsening changes to the bone, underlying bone, and also inflammation of the joint. And today we release some really positive news off the back of MRIs looking at the 6-month time point. In terms of the market opportunity, I will focus on the markets where we are currently involved in clinical trials in phase 3, so US, EU5, Canada and Australia. There is predicted to be about 120 million people with clinically diagnosed osteoarthritis by 2030. So we know our phase 3 program and our programs to date have focused on osteoarthritis of the knee, but we're also looking to hip as we progress through our clinical program as the main regions in the body that have osteoarthritis. Current medications we know that patients are dissatisfied with. So a study that has been published talks about 81% of patients are dissatisfied with current treatments. So whether they're not helping their current symptoms or being able to prolong the durability of their response, we know that there's certainly an opportunity for a drug that not only treats the symptoms of osteoarthritis, so pain, loss of function, stiffness, inflammation, but also have an effect on the underlying disease. We did some global market research that was released a couple of years ago that was independent global market research that talked about our drug, which is trade name Xylosol, would be reimbursable in the US market at about $2,500 US per year for one course of treatment. As I said, so the market demand, some of the current therapies available or medications available, this was based off a recent presentation we did where we looked at a lot of the literature and what is the durability of the pain and functional or the pain response against for our drug, IPPS, versus the current available therapies. So if you look down the column, you see the oral medications, obviously a very quick onset and continued use, 1 day or less, their durability in terms of pain response. As we move into other pain medications that are used, corticosteroids, one injection that is into the joint, so done under radiography, under ultrasound, and has a peak effect that comes on very quickly, but the durable response only lasts out to about 13 to 26 weeks, depending on which product. Hyaluronic acid, very similar. We have a peak effect that comes on very quickly after 2 to 5 injections of the drug, and then really tails off and has no effect by about the week 26 mark. So we released some data from a phase 2 study of 61 patients that tracked patients that had PPS, so 6-week course of PPS, and we tracked them over a year. And we found a significant reduction in pain, a significant improvement in function out to 1 year following one course of the treatment. So in terms of what is available in the market to what we're working with IPPS, we believe that there's no comparable drug to what we're working with. A little bit on the development program. that gives us a lot of confidence in what we're doing with the chosen dose we're going forward with. We have conducted and completed 2 phase 2 programs. So Para 005 was a phase 2 program of 121 people with the primary endpoint of reduction in pain, improvement of function. That trial read out in 2018 and met its primary endpoint. We also have just completed the phase 2 study Para 008, which looked at the reduction of synovial fluid biomarkers, so the enzymes within the actual knee joint that have that show cartilage degradation. So we saw a reduction in a lot of these enzymes that progress the disease within the knee joint. We also tracked by MRIs, and we released the data today showing very significant news in terms of we're actually seeing an increase in cartilage thickness at 6 months following one course of the treatment and reduction in bone marrow lesions. And we also, in that trial, tracked patients over a year and saw a pain reduction and functional improvement that was statistical against placebo at 12 months. We've also conducted, we haven't conducted, but there has been a special access scheme, a TGA special access scheme that has been available to patients in Australia, where they can go to their prescribing doctor, and if they failed other medications, they can get access to this drug or this treatment via the TGA special access scheme. So to date, we've had about 600 patients that have undergone PPS treatment via the special access scheme, and we actually did report data on over 300 of those for knee osteoarthritis, but it has been used for other forms of osteoarthritis as well to good effect. As I said, we are currently in phase 3, which began recruiting in 2021, and we've just finished the first stage of a 2-stage trial. So we've completed enrolment of that first stage of over 500-600 patients in that first stage of the trial. Very quickly, I'll summarise what we've seen in the recently reported phase 2 study, Para 008. So IPPS demonstrated efficacy for both objective and subjective measures against placebo in a double-blinded placebo-controlled trial. So what we're talking about there, an objective measure, we saw an improvement or a reduction in synovial fluid biomarkers that are associated with progression of the disease. So an example of that, we see cartilage breakdown, and we see an elevation of those enzymes associated with cartilage breakdown in a normal knee OA patient. We've been able to report that those enzymes have been reduced at day 56 and day 168, so 2 weeks after the final injection and about 6 months in PPS patients compared to placebo. We also reported today significant MRI findings at the 6-month time point. So improvement in cartilage volume, improvement in cartilage thickness versus placebo group. We saw a reduction in both of those measures. So very significant data. I won't try and go into it today, but we did a webinar this morning that will be available on the Paradigm website. We actually have some of the MRI images used in the trial, and our global head of OA explains what we're seeing in those. We also saw significant improvements in change from baseline in WOMAC pain, function, and overall WOMAC scores. So subjective measures, and this will be our primary endpoint in our phase 3 trial. So we reported those at day 56, was our primary endpoint of the phase 3 trial, as reduction or a change from baseline in WOMAC pain and function. So we reported statistical significance in those numbers at day 56. Improvements at day 168, and again significant reductions at 1 year following one course of treatment. So the opportunity that we have in front of us at Paradigm, we have extensive clinical data from 2 phase 2s showing reduction in pain, improvement in function at our primary endpoint, that is our phase 3 clinical trial. We also have a huge amount of real-world experience and patient testimonials around the effect that this is having in their lives. Our phase 3 program, our phase 3 OA program, has received FDA fast track, and we have completed stage 1 enrolment and have randomised over 600 patients across 120 sites globally. So clinical team has certainly shown the ability to conduct enrolment across a huge amount of sites globally. I think we're in 7 countries recruiting patients. So we expect to continue that through stage 2 of our phase 3 and also the confirmatory trial early next year. Recent results that we released over the last week show that the treatment effect, indicating a treatment effect of OA beyond relief of symptoms, so pain and function, only supports IPPS as a blockbuster opportunity in the treatment of osteoarthritis. Strong IP and patent protection. With our partner Beno, the manufacturing, we've already completed our commercial scale and manufacturing capabilities, and that will be ready to go from launch. Obviously, our strategy is to partner the clinical assets, so we believe that will obviously be seen as validation from a partner point of view in the program that they're doing. A little bit of near-term news flow. We have last Tuesday released the 12-month clinical outcome data from our phase 2 trial. That is available on our website as a webinar, as is today's announcement that was very, very significant in the MRI findings. We plan to go to the US FDA and have a discussion around a disease-modifying label or pathway for the drug. So we see that as a huge opportunity. There are no disease-modifying osteoarthritis treatments that have been approved. Following the readout of data over the last week, we believe we will have enough information to go back to the TGA for provisional approval. So this is a application and pathway that we started back in 2019, and now with 12 months durability and having the ability to show that we are affecting the underlying disease of OA, we plan to continue that down that application pathway and expedite our pathway to market. So having provisional approval will give us the opportunity to market in Australia prior to the finish of our global clinical trials. And our phase 3, we will have some information on the dose selection, which we'll be heading forward for our stage 2 and obviously our confirmatory study. So with that, and there are some questions.
Yes,
thank you. Yes, Bruce.
Two-part question. How seamless do you think, given your recent OA and efficacy studies on dosage, that you'll be able to, given the FDA requires you to go to lower dosage level of 1.5 once a week and placebo and 2x2, is that going to be a seamless transition to modulate the O3 trial regimen to be a 2x2? And the second part is unofficially, the poster childs of PPS have been Andrew Walker, Greg Williams and Michael Shudo. Do you know unofficially what the take-up rate of other AFL players has been? And the NFL alumni, how much recruitment has been word of mouth into the O3 trials in the US test centres?
Okay, first part of that question, how seamless is our transition to stage 2 with our twice milligram? The clinical team believe that will be reasonably seamless. We will need to be able to submit a protocol amendment or a slight change in protocol to the FDA. But
what's the timing on that?
We believe we'll be able to start the next stage ahead of where our dose selection was planned to be at the end of Q1 next year. So we should have our dose confirmed and then be able to move on, ideally ahead of where we had planned early next year. Secondly, how many AFL footballers? There would be a number. I think there will be a new news from today's results that we'll have another AFL footballer that's had a really good outcome. I know there's certainly probably over 20-50 that have had the drug, current and also former players. And you're right, we also did do a trial in the US with ex-NFL players, and they had a fantastic outcome. So that had led to a corporate partnership or partnership with the NFL past players, and they've been fantastic in spreading the word. So we've had a huge amount of enrolment. We've done presentations to the chapter presidents from the ex-NFL players based on the outcomes of these 10 guys. regain their life. They've stopped using other medications or alcohol in some cases to manage their pain, and they've lost weight because of sleeping better, because they have no pain. They're back exercising, so their overall well-being and mood has improved. So that was a fantastic outcome from that expanded access program, and it's certainly been key for the US market.
Assuming the MPS 6 studies continue in a positive light,
yep.
Is that something that the FDA might consider an orphan disease and therefore has a much higher reimbursement potential than 2,500 case?
Yeah, so very quickly, MPS obviously a rare genetic disease, ultra-rare genetic disease. That MPS 6 trial it's been conducted in Brazil, where there's a higher proportion of MPS 6 sufferers. We do have one of the global key opinion leaders in this space as the principal investigator of that trial. So we believe the data from our phase 2, which is actually a large phase 2 study in this disease, 13 patients, and it has a placebo arm to that trial. We believe, depending on the data, we'll be able to go to the Brazilian regulator, Anvisa, and potentially look at an accelerated pathway. The US might be a little bit different. There isn't a huge population of people with this disease in the US, but there are certainly other regions through Latin America, certainly MENA as well, that will look at expedited or accelerated approval type situation for MPS 6, depending on the data that's due later this year, sort of late November.
You indicated that the dosage will work for at least 12 months. What's your best guess in terms of, have you got patients that are already showing still positive impact well beyond 12 months?
Very good question. So when we were talking, so we have a doctor that has, out of that special access scheme, he has treated probably 200, 300 patients. When you speak to him around, okay, when are your patients coming back to you? And mentioning that they've pain returning, or they would like to look at another course of treatment. He commented that it's probably around 18 to 24 months. So we've had those testimonials for a long time in terms of what the pain duration is, pain reduction duration, and functional improvement. But to be able to now back that up in a placebo-controlled clinical trial where placebo has returned back to baseline, and our PPS has stayed quite consistent in terms of the pain reduction out to 12 months. We have clinical data, that's what's been asked for, but certainly the testimonials from a lot of patients are that the 18 months to 24 months, pain's returning a little bit, and when you're in chronic pain or a huge amount of pain, people just don't want to go back to where they were. So they're certainly trying.
2.5 years personally.
Yeah, so they're certainly trying to get in front of returning to that pain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. We all take time. Very compelling investment proposition and very modest enterprise value to go with it. I would like now to introduce Immuron and Simon Ledimore. Immuron is developing and commercialising oral polyclonal antibodies for the treatment of gut-mediated diseases. In short, if any of you are contemplating a trip to India or any similar underdeveloped country, you must contemplate using Travelan. It's a product that's been around. It should be better known than it is. Stephen is well known to us and well known in the biotech sector and well respected, of course. And we know Stephen from these days years ago at Bionomics and more recently at Antara, but he's been CEO of Immuron since 2022. Would you all please welcome Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Rudy. Yeah, Rudy and I first met when I was at Bionomics. I came back from Canada. I was working for Apotex Inc., Canada's largest pharmaceutical company in 2017 for family reasons as a CFO, and it was my first time being a biotech listed company CEO. Learned the ropes from Deborah. I'm very happy that I'd I did that, and was also happy to see that Bionomics finally got their positive clinical data on their PTSD clinical study, as did Anatara, the previous company I was at. So hopefully third time lucky with Immuron. Safe harbour statement. Just a quick overview of the shareholder base. So we are listed on both ASX, that's the primary listing as IMC, and ADRs, American Depository Receipts, are traded also on NASDAQ on IMRN. BMY Mellon is the ADR holder, so they're not a shareholder per se. They hold on behalf of mostly retail shareholders in the US market. So we don't have any individually significant shareholders with more than 5%, but management and board do hold some 3%, and Grand Lodge down the bottom there is one of the directors' investment companies. You can see there that we have $17.2 million in cash, yet trading only at a market cap of a bit over 18 million. So the enterprise value, if you like, is not attributing too much to what we're currently doing, but my plan today is to talk to you about why that should not be the case. Rudy mentioned Travelan, and I think the biggest issue with Travelan is not that it doesn't work, because it clearly does. It's proven by a clinical trial that was conducted in Poland, showing up to 90% effectiveness. So it's the product you should be taking if you travel to a high-risk region that is known to have traveller's diarrhoea, up to 90% protection. So we market it as travel insurance for your holiday. Biggest issue I think Immuron's had, and Rudy mentioned I joined in June of last year, was that we really haven't marketed the product appropriately and have focused most of our energy on R&D. So we've just started doing that, and if you had a look at our last annual report, you would have seen that sales increased at a big percentage increase off a low base to $1.8 million, and even if you compare back to the FY20 or 2019, 2020 calendar year pre the pandemic, which was our peak, we're travelling ahead of that. And so the plan is to not only to continue to get the word out in Australia, where we're in all pharmacies across Australia, but also to market the product in the US, which clearly is a 10x type opportunity. And apart from the US and Australia, we also have the product in Canada. I'm looking to expand that beyond those three markets by talking to potential marketers in both Europe and Asia at the present. So what is the market potential? I mentioned $1.8 million, which is relatively small, but if you look at the US market and European markets alone, and consider that there is no drug approved for prevention of traveller's diarrhoea, and in terms of competing over-the-counter products, there really aren't any comparable products to ours. So it's really up to us to prove the market potential. And if you take a conservative estimate of the number of people that travel in the US and Europe to high-risk regions, you can see that the market potential there is significantly higher than what we're currently doing today. So a huge opportunity. And the other program that we have, and I'll talk a little bit about that later using the technology, is for Clostridioides difficile, which is a serious infectious disease. That market total is about 1.7 billion, so there are other large market opportunities for our product. Might just spend a little bit of time telling you what the product is. So it is an oral product. And it's based on bovine colostrum, and you may ask, well, why bovine colostrum? And this is the key to the technology. So essentially we develop proprietary animal vaccines for a targeted pathogen, and in the case of Travelan, that's 13 different types of enterotoxigenic E. coli in 2 different vaccines that are given to a pregnant cow prior to calving, and And why a cow? So in humans and other mammals, typically immunity is passed from the mother to the child through the placenta. And uniquely in camels and some other animals like camels, for example, immunity is actually passed through colostrum, which is that first milk that is produced. So when you give a vaccine to a cow during this stage, in reaction to that vaccine, the cow produces polyclonal antibodies, which are expressed in the colostrum. So in a sense, the colostrum, we collect it, so it's a liquid, we'll defat it, we'll remove most of the lactose, and we'll spray dry, a bit like you spray dry baby infant formula. That becomes the drug substance for our product. It gets compressed into a simple tablet, which is has some minor other ingredients, mostly to do with removing moisture out of the product, given that it's a milk-based product. And there you have it. You have an oral product that's available for prevention of infectious diseases. We were able to launch Travelan on the market because bovine colostrum is known to be generally regarded as safe. So we have GRAS status in the US. So in the US, it's sold as a dietary supplement. And through the clinical data that we have that I mentioned before, showing up to 90% clinical effectiveness in preventing traveller's diarrhoea, we were able to actually get health claims or label claims in both Australia and Canada. And the Australian ones are listed here. So these are not reviewed and approved by the US FDA, but in Australia we can show that we can reduce the occurrence of traveller's diarrhoea, we can reduce the symptoms, we can do all sorts of wonderful things to the gut. In fact, we've done other studies in liver disease. We did a NASH study as well, so we have claims for liver health as well. So generally speaking, it's a very good product, and we're able to make those claims here, and we're doing quite well with it, but plan to increase that further. Unfortunately, in the US market, for a dietary supplement, you can't make such claims. So we can't market the product in the US like we do here. And at present, we're working with the US Department of Defense on going through a BLA, so Biologics License Application process, to get the product approved as a prescription medicine. So these are the pipeline products that we have using this technology. So IMM124E is the active drug substance in Travelan. That's the one that's currently got an FDA IND approval. And just today, quite coincidentally, I reported that we completed the recruitment of the second 50%, so cohort 2 in the phase 2 clinical study that we're currently undertaking in the US. This study is being done in conjunction with the Naval Medical Research Command with their funding. The military has been a great partner for Immuron over the years. So preceding these human clinical trials, we work with a number of different departments in the US Department of Defense, including the Walter Reed Institute, the Armed Forces Medical Research Institute, doing a number of preclinical studies showing that the active ingredient, IMM124E, has broad antimicrobial activity against many targeted pathogens, including most of those that are of interest to the military. You may ask, why is the military funding a dietary supplement? They would like it to be a prescription medicine, and it so happens that infectious diseases and E. coli and Shigella and Vibrio cholera and a number of other pathogens that our product works against are on the high unmet need list for the military, hence the funding. So the good thing is we don't have a lot of cash burn from the clinical trials that we're doing because the US military are funding it. And that's the case also for the Camp ETEC program, which is showing down the bottom there. So that also has an FDA IND approval, and we're going through the ethical process to get the clinical trial approved. We aim to start that early in the next calendar year. Just coincidentally, another part of the US military, independently, the Uniformed Services University is running a phase 4 clinical trial with our Travelan over-the-counter product. That started out, they were going to trial it against 2 other products, one being a probiotic and the other one was, I think, a prebiotic. Both of those companies pulled their products out of the trial, which is good for us. So we have now a 868 subject trial, Travelan versus placebo, in a phase 4 pharma standard randomised clinical trial that will show whether our product will prevent travellers' diarrhoea in active US and UK military personnel. That study is currently around 50% recruited. So we're hoping that this study actually will be a good supportive study for Travelan when we go back to the FDA after the end of our phase 2. Another pipeline product that we have is for IMM529, and this is the product for Clostridioides difficile. That's the $1.7 billion market opportunity that I mentioned. A bit like Paradigm, I had external independent opportunity assessment done by a consulting firm in the US called Lumanity on both Travelan, IMM124E, and IMM529. And the reason I did that is because when I joined Immuron, both of these programs had been sitting on the shelf during that period over COVID where no clinical trials were being done, whereas some other competitor products had been continuing to move along, and 2 recently got approvals, and they're microbiome therapies for Clostridioides. One was a company called Rebiotics, the other one's Ceres Therapeutics. They were both approved for recurrent CDI, and this is in Clostridioides difficile. It gets treated with antibiotics, so typically a phytomoxicin or a vancomycin. And then, unfortunately, 40% of the people who got treated, even though they were temporarily cured of it, re-get it. And that happens time and again. So both of these products were approved for recurrence, second recurrence, so after they've got it the second time round. In our trial, we will be going after not only recurrent patients, but also primary patients, so competing directly, if you like, with antibiotics. Antibiotics are the majority of that large $1.7 billion market opportunity. If you look at just the recurrent market alone, the estimate of Lumanity Consulting was that it's a US $100 million annual sales market in the US alone for this particular product. And the good news is that similar market opportunity for Travelan in the US market, also roughly around US $100 million. The benefits of getting Travelan approved as a prescription medicine, as distinct from us marketing it as a dietary supplement, is that we can make those label claims. We can get reimbursed, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurers in the US, and most importantly, with FDA approval and clinical trials showing effectiveness in a phase 3 trial in a field study, we aiming to get onto the CDC Yellow Book and the International Society of Travel Medicine guidelines. So these are the guidelines that physicians, when they're considering what to prescribe to a patient that is travelling to a high-risk region, they'll look to say, what is it that we should be doing for this patient? At the moment, if you look at the CDC Yellow Book, it simply says that you should be careful what water that you drink, be careful what food that you eat, wash your hands. They're all hygiene things. So, and of course, we all try to do that when you go to Bali or India or one of these places, but it's not always possible. And wouldn't it be nice to have a product that you can take that ensures that you don't get it, even if you do happen to drink contaminated water or eat contaminated food? And that's what Travelan offers the opportunity for people to do. Just quickly on milestones coming up, it's a rich period. I've added one just today that's not on this. That's 50% recruited. The second 50% is recruited, and it's starting the inpatient phase for the Travelan phase 2 clinical trial. We have the Institutional Review Board at present approving a protocol for CAMP-ETEC, and we plan to start that clinical trial early in the new calendar year. And in the first half, so this is before the end of our financial year, we have a number of readouts of our clinical trials. So on the Travelan phase 2, we expect to report our data probably around June 2024. So lots of rich milestones. And in the meantime, we're spending a lot of time and effort on marketing Travelan. And I mentioned that we did 1.8 million last year, which was 136% up on the year prior. in the month of August alone, after resolving some short-term supply chain issues, we did over $1 million in 1 month. So there's definitely demand out there. People are travelling again, and business is doing well. So I might stop there and pause for questions.
Just a couple. What's the competitive landscape like, and do you have a high point of sales presence at departure lounges? Because not everyone's that organised. To go to their local chemist warehouse and load up before they go, they might just be walking out and say, oh shit.
Yeah, so we do in Australia. So if you went to a pharmacy within the airport in Australia, it would be typically available actually on a countertop, so you can get it last minute before you go on the flight. We're not currently in that situation in the US, and that's why our US sales are relatively small. We sell to Passport Health. They have about 250 travel clinics around the US, but that requires people that are prepared to go out and get their vaccinations and things, and while they're there they get sold our Travelan product. Just launched on Amazon in July in the US market, and are presently talking to retail pharmacy chains about getting it into retail pharmacy. So no, we're not in airports in the US, the largest market yet, but that is the plan, and there's big upside from being able to do that.
And the competitive landscape?
Competitive landscape, as I mentioned before, no drug is approved for prevention of travellers' diarrhoea. The military are highly interested in it, and they've been working for over 40 years on trying to develop human vaccines for, for Shigella, for E. coli. I read just recently, actually, that J&J just sold off their E. coli vaccine program to Sanofi. That there's nothing in the prescription space. There are probiotics and things, prebiotics that people use to try and just generally improve the gut health that might help you fight, just with your own immune system against prevention, but not really. So our key thing is to market well the product with the claims that we can make now, and to complete the clinical trials, get that effectiveness data, and get into those CDC Yellow Book and ISTM guidelines.
Is it the regulatory environment that's stopping you selling in those third world countries where this is an issue?
Yeah, that's an interesting question that's been asked before. So in India, for example, if you or I travelled to India and drank water and ate food, highly likely that you would get traveller's diarrhoea. However, people that live there, they generally build up their own sort of immunity to it. So we're not really targeting people within countries because they have
airports or where tourists congregate in those countries.
Yeah, so that's just been something the company hasn't spent time to find distributors in those markets, but it's certainly something that we should be looking at. As I mentioned before, we're looking for a European distributor for that very reason, and also a Pan-Asian distributor.
Stephen, the plan for sales and marketing and distributors, what are you predicting those sales figures over the next 3 years?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. We don't provide forward-looking statements, unfortunately. That causes all sorts of problems when you come with insurers for directors and officers' liability and the like. But I mean, you can take last year's growth rate is indicative of where the product's going, and I've given a long-term projection of where we'd like to get to. And you can pick your graph whether you want to make it a straight line or hockey stick or whatever you like to try and get there. But we don't know how long it will take to get there, but the plan is to grow it from where it currently is to those larger numbers.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned working with DoD on towards BLA. What do you think is the shape and size of the study that might support such an application?
Yeah, so post phase 2, so I didn't touch on that just due to lack of time, but in the phase 2 study for infectious diseases, much like they did for COVID vaccine studies, they typically get healthy volunteers that volunteer to get infected with a pathogen to trial whether it works or not, and that's what this study is. So there's 60 healthy volunteers that have volunteered to be infected with enterotoxigenic E. coli, so you give them the bug that's known to cause diarrhoea, and they've been given either our product or placebo to show whether it prevented it or not. And that's the phase 2 study. This is the same trial design as what we already did, that Polish study I mentioned before that was successful. The only difference is dosing. So the Polish study was given 3 times daily, once with each meal was how it was done. Military don't really want people in the field having to take it during the day, so they've requested that trial be done as once a day. So it's a once a day dosing, and that's the only difference in that protocol. The Uniform Services University study that I mentioned before, they're doing it twice a day, so they're skipping that one in the middle. And compliance rate seems to be high, so twice daily dosing might be okay for that trial. But in terms of the what the FDA might require, post-phase 2, they're typically going to require at least one phase 3 study. We're hoping that it is one, that we might be able to use the Uniform Services University study as supportive. And I imagined it would be similar to that Uniform Services University. So that's an 868 patient type study, so it's going to be probably around that 1,000 people. And the results of that study will give us a good guideline as to what powering and how many patients do you need in the trial to get a statistically significant result for a clinical outcome.
With the DoD from phase 3?
That's what we're talking to them at the moment. So we're talking about funding phase 3 as well as potentially also funding the Clostridioides difficile program.
Thank you for explaining the challenge phase. That's what I was wondering about for the phase 2. In the phase 3, how is the logistics of the study going to work? And also, do you need to ensure that if you go to a challenge, presumably, how many patients will you have to enroll to ensure?
Yeah, so that's the reason for the big difference in patient numbers. So in the challenge study, it's 60 patients. That Uniform Services University study is 868 patients, and you need that because they may or may not actually get traveller's diary when you're travelling.
Yeah, and how do you enroll them to make sure that they some of them are getting?
Yeah, so this Uniform Services University study is active US and UK military personnel that are being deployed to these high-risk regions, so countries where it's known that the risk of traveller's diarrhea is high. Yeah, exactly.
How do you take into account, you mentioned that it has a broad spectrum, however, how do you need to take into account the potential differences in the infection?
Yeah, so as part of the protocol, you would typically, after getting diarrhea, take samples and find out actually what the pathogen was. So it has broad spectrum, but there may be a parasite or something else that caused the problem, and you want to know why. If it didn't work for some reason, why didn't it work?
Okay,
very good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Stephen.
Thank you, Reed.
That's excellent. Yeah, another great story, this time with a very skimpy enterprise value. I just want to thank you all very much for attending today, and I also want to thank FB Rice, our partners in putting on these events. And the last thing I've got to do is invite you to join us for some refreshments outside the door afterwards, but thanks very much for coming.